Welcome back to A Little Bit of Cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast. I'm your host, Cody Depius. That is Sam Douglas. It is now December. There's snow on the ground. My tires are terrible. I already got to get one of them refilled. But the winter is officially here. How's it been treating you so far, Sam?
Winter is here. I'm loving the snow. I went back home for the weekend to go to a little concert, so I was in Milwaukee over the weekend. Shout out the boys back home. Had a good time back there. But yeah, hey, snow's on the ground, and it's time to get in some nitty-gritty of football weather here.
Who'd you see for concert?
Alley Cat, she's a bass music DJ, super fun. I like some of the
Nice.
openers for her as well. Flow Zone and Super Ave. They're kind of like a dubstep trap scene on the east side of Milwaukee. It was super cool. I've been stoked to see her for a long time. One of my buddy's favorite artists. So
Good.
it was a good night.
Good for you. Well, we had a lot to be happy about, at least when it came towards Packers and some other performances. I have my first ever Milwaukee Bucks hat on. That was my Black Friday shopping gift to myself. The first one I ever owned. I got a good deal on it at Lids. But Packers doing well, Bucks doing well. The Badgers, we'll touch that conversation a little bit, at least the football side. Basketball's been doing well, but a lot to be happy about. Jordan Love, his second straight week without an interception. He was 21 for 28. If you can do math, that is 75% completion percentage. He had 274 yards, two touchdowns. I think this might have been the cleanest, best game we've seen out of Jordan Love so far.
Absolutely. It looked precise. If we were saying it going into last week, we just needed to see 1 week for him to get over that hump and, understand that he doesn't need to be forcing some of these balls, that he can go a clean slate and not throw a pick. And this is exactly what we were looking for. The Dolphins were not ready to play in the cold whatsoever. Their head coach was looking freezing on the sidelines. Tua was talking about it before the game, how he wanted to change the narrative. It was all in their heads. This is not a fantastic showing from the Dolphins. But again, the Packers showed up and they executed. That's what we've been asking from them all season. That's what teams like the Lions have been doing. Teams like the Bills is just showing up and executing and taking care of business. That's exactly what the Packers did on Thursday.
And I like to see how they were able to change a bit of the offensive scheme too, where Jacobs had kind of been carrying the offense on the ground. He didn't run that great on the ground. He did have the one rushing touchdown, but I believe, 19 carries for 43 yards. That's like 2.3 yards per carry. Not getting it done there. But what are you doing? It's not working on the ground. Get the guy out in the flat. You pass him the ball. And Josh Jacobs ending up with 117 total yards. And of course, that touchdown I said before, he had 74 receiving yards. And of course, one juke that sent a Dolphin to the moon. It was awesome. But I like how they're able to utilize these players in different ways. Tucker Kraft, six receptions, 78 receiving yards. They're able to get a bunch of guys in on the mix here. What did you like offensively overall as the unit for Green Bay's win?
It just looked like a good offense. We were never really struggling through that game. Miami put up, some yards and a little bit of points late, but it looked like a full team effort. It wasn't just one person. Reed got the touchdowns. Jacobs got some yards in the carry. Everybody got some sort of action. Tucker Kraft looked like an absolute dog out there.
Mm-hmm.
Offense was humming. It wasn't finding one receiver, kind of what I talked about last week, but it fit the mold of what we needed to do to make the game work. Offensive line. I'm gonna get into it early. My Munster of the week. It's about darn time we put some respect on Zach Tom's name. This
Yeah.
offensive line is absolutely incredible. Over the past 5 games we've played, we've let 4 sacks happen. 4 sacks in 5 games. That's not a Packers offensive line that I'm used to seeing. This is awesome. We talk about Goody having some masterclass moves like Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs. Um, our offensive line, I checked out the draft position of our offensive line. Right now, Elton Jenkins is the old man on the line right now. He was drafted in 2019. After that, Josh Myers was a 2021. Sean Ryan, 2022 third rounder. Zach Tom, 2022 fourth rounder. Rasheed Walker, we know he was a seventh rounder in 2022. These kids are young and they are balling out right now. When Jacobs isn't going to get you 100 on the ground, when Love isn't going to be throwing 300, we can win games on the line. It's a beautiful sight to see. They're keeping Love clean for the second week in a row.
Hey man, I've been saying this since Detroit. This line has been getting the job done. Jordan Love has the lowest sack percentage in the entire league. I think it's at
Nice.
like less than 3%. It is minuscule. He's only been sacked 10 times all season. That is something I don't think I've ever seen from an Aaron Rodgers offensive line. And it's a lot of these guys. Like, talk about Rasheed Walker is your left tackle, a seventh rounder. Elton Jenkins, the old man drafted back in 2019. But yes, Zach Tom has been that guy. But it hasn't just been the offensive line blocking either. My Munster of the week, this one is a little bit of a surprise, but I tweeted this out during the game. Dontavion Wicks
Oh
is
yeah.
one heck of a blocker on the edge. Yes, he had the drop, but he added his 4 receptions, 30 yards in the passing game as well. You're starting, he still continues to get open. I think he's going to continue to get the ball too. I think they have trust in him and they're going to keep on hoping that those hands develop. But he uses those hands very well in the blocking game. You saw multiple run plays out on the edge, screen plays, and he's a big reason why Josh Jacobs had a very successful day through the air. It's because Dontavion Wicks is blocking whoever's in front of him. He's a great blocker. That's the reason they keep him on the field. But really, this whole wide receiver unit, they are physical, all of them. I love how they block out on the edge. It is the way that football is supposed to be played. So all you folks out there who aren't Dontavion Wicks, guys, yes, I understand he drops a lot of passes, but he does so much for this offense. And I think it's very deserving performance for Munster of the week.
After losing Alan Lazard, like we had Alan Lazard as our blocking guy
Mm-hmm.
for the past 4 or 5 years, and so for an offensive scheme that wants to be doing these outside runs that doesn't live off them, but for what we want to work, we have to have the threat of that outside run going. And so these blocking wide receivers and the buy-in from these young guys is crucial, and I think that speaks to Matt LaFleur and the control that he has over these guys. So props to
I, I
him.
I think so as well. Well, you have all these swing plays with Jaden Reed and Christian Watson, and there's just so much creativity that you can use when those guys are able to block the edge. And so many of those guys are able to do it. But I do want to talk a little bit about the defense. As for those listening on Spotify, you can't see, but Sam's Zoom name here is a quote from Xavier McKinney, where he said Quay is the best middle linebacker in the league. I will say, going back to last week, I do apologize for my statements 2 weeks ago, saying words such as embarrassing and incompetent. Quay Walker's really stepped up these last 2 weeks. I think he's found himself in a lot of plays where he should be, which is what you expect out of a guy that is drafted in the first round and has that type of athletic ability. That is the guy that you want in on almost every tackle. He had a great game. I thought Isaiah McDuffie played well as well. Lucas Van Ness got another sack. I think this is a really, really solid performance for the defense overall, and I want your thoughts too.
I got Anik Barre and McDuffie written down. Obviously, Xavier McKinney had the nice quote about Quay. But Anik Barre and McDuffie, seeing these guys pop up, they've been on the field. We're just waiting to start hearing them make tackles, make some noise. Like we've seen Van Ness taking all these snaps. It's just make some plays when it matters. And like I said, the Dolphins were not ready for the conditions. My cat is eating my food. Get out of here, dude. But some of the Quay thing, I think similar, not quite to the level of the Bucks. I think he's a little bit at fault of the expectations. We expect so much out of him. The middle linebacker on the Packers, like I said earlier this year, Blake Martinez led the league in tackles at one point. You're supposed to be the dog out there. You're supposed to be the captain, and we're supposed to see excellent things. And he did not give us a lot to get excited about, whether it was on-field ejections early in his career, whether it was just not making splash plays, whether it was dropping interceptions that we've seen him drop a handful of times. The dude's a dog. He's an athlete. He's a first-round middle linebacker. And if he can get it together, absolutely, this linebacking core can be something. I'm not going to go over the top right now and say we've got a top half linebacking core in the league. But when these guys are making plays and playing to their athleticism, I think that gives Halfley's one deep safety a much different look for this defense as a whole.
100%. You've had two solid performances to this point. Before that, we were asking a lot more of this linebacker core. But now you have 2 consecutive games where you have Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie. They're in there. They're making the tackles. Like I'm not seeing the broken tackles that we're accustomed to seeing. I'm not seeing the open holes that we were accustomed to seeing early on this season, even though the defense as a unit has performed pretty well overall. You see 2 consecutive weeks where these linebackers are playing well. Edgerrin Cooper hasn't been there. I think this is going to be really good for when he comes back off of that hamstring injury and he can step in and fill in. Maybe he's learning a little bit more watching these guys actually succeed too, because it was ugly for the first half of the season. It really was for Quay Walker. But these last 2 games, he looks like the guy that they want in that building. So I'd like to see this continue, and this is going to be a scary defense. I will mention without Jair Alexander, there is a ceiling on this defense and is not as high as I would like for it to be. I think the defensive backs played well, but you still saw a lot of holes in the coverage there. Keyshawn Nixon cannot be covering on the outside. Guys are going to get open. Eric Stokes, he can't do it. Green Bay was able to go and win this game because of the pass rush and because of their play inside the box. It was not because of the corners. I still think there is a lot to be deserved when it comes to coverage.
They were open. Tua was inaccurate early and often. He ended up with 300 pass yards on the day. Some of that was garbage yardage. Tua was not putting the ball where he needed to. There's a couple third downs where he was just missing guys. So I don't think our secondary was challenged as much as they could have, and Tua still finished with 370 passing yards on the day.
Yeah.
You look at our schedule for the rest of the year. Definitely winnable games, a couple conference ones. Lions, Seahawks, Saints, Vikings, Bears. All of those have a stud wide receiver room. Even you look at the Saints, like Olave's, he's out, right? Or he's playing?
I just know New Orleans is bad.
He's concussed. He might have been out. But outside of the Saints, like you're going to be dealing with DK, you're going to be dealing with Amon-Ra, you're going to be dealing with Justin Jefferson and Addison, and then you see Keenan Allen and Odinze. This secondary will be worked, they will be tested, and they hopefully will be ready come playoff time.
Yeah, that's what you hope for. And still not a whole lot of word back from Jair Alexander. I would say for everybody's expectations, just expect that he's not going to be on the field. And if he ever does make it back, take that as your early Christmas present or whatever it may be, because I don't think hopes are high. If you watched that game last night, Christian McCaffrey walked himself off the field. It was because of a presumed torn PCL. That's the same thing that Jair is dealing with. You could tell that you lose a lot of movement in that knee if you don't have that PCL. So don't get your hopes up is the way that I'll put that. But overall,
before we leave the Packers, we got to give love to Josh Jacobs just taking the turkey tray and walking out.
I do love that. Yes,
that was beautiful.
That was good. And I love his comments too, like him going out and saying Green Bay took a chance on me, so I'm going to pour my whole heart into this team. I think this is one of those guys that you love to root for, and he is such a good football player. I remember watching him for Vegas and saying, boy, if we had a running back like that. Now Green Bay has a running back like that. Like the offense, this is one that you dream of. The offensive talent up and down the line, the quarterback, your tight end play, your wide receiver potential, like they are there. This is a Super Bowl offense. My biggest concern for this team, as I just stated, is the defensive backfield. But where everybody's playing together, and even your backup running backs too. Chris Brooks looks like a dude. Emmanuel Wilson looks like a dude. We haven't even seen the rookie running back yet this year because he's got appendicitis now. Marshawn Lloyd has not been there. But once he gets in the mix too, everybody's there. I'm very excited for this offense. Every single position group is getting it done. And Josh Jacobs, he just brings so much value to this team. The running back will never die. And Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, all those guys are showing us why. Got to go pay those guys. And Green Bay, they went out and they gave Jacobs a little chunk of change. And now they're reaping the rewards. Yes, a great win for Green Bay over Miami. They will have Detroit on Thursday. We'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of the show, I do believe. The Wisconsin Badgers football program, this is the dark place, which we can kind of get into this a little bit, but they lose to Minnesota. They lose Paul Bunyan's axe. They lost all 3 trophy games this year. They're under 500, and they're not making a bowl game for the second time in my entire lifetime, because the last time was in 2001, and I was an infant. And now Wisconsin going back to those dark ages. What are your overall thoughts on this team? We know what the schedule looks like next year. I just want to get what's going through your mind. Wisconsin 5-7 don't deserve a bowl game, and looking at a really tough year next year too.
They don't deserve it. I mean, when your starting quarterback goes out that early, you got to prepare for the worst for a season. It's tough to see the Badgers go out like this, especially 2 weeks ago after such a great Oregon game. We thought we could finish the season strong. Hopes were never high for this team. Still, it's not the standard that the Badgers should be playing to. We know we're part of a process. I'm happy to be past this year and flush it and move on. Keep Fickle, keep the guys. Hopefully, we get some returning faces. Hopefully, we don't lose. Maybe we do want to lose too much in the transfer portal, but let's revitalize and get back in next year. You hate to see Minnesota take the axe, but let's let them have it this year, and then let's let the Fickle process run itself out. Give them next year, give them the year after, and make a decision from there. But like we talked about last week, 8 losses. If this gets worse than where it's at, I think we start talking about the next step in the process. But understanding that we are part of a process right now, let's take the offseason and get back at it.
I think 8 losses is definitely a possibility. Like with the roster that they have, no, with the roster that they have right now, if you look at the schedule they have coming up next year, 8 losses is very within the realm of possibility. And I think Chris McIntosh, who's Wisconsin's athletic director, I think he understands where this thing is going, because the schedule then at 2026 gets easy, and that's going to be a full Luke Fickle team. I think that's when you really go in. That's when you have expectations. Next year, that's a schedule where anybody in Division I college football would struggle with. It is a brutal, brutal schedule. The road schedule, I don't know if they're going to win any of those tough games. Like it's going to be a gauntlet next year. So as bad as we think it is now, it's going to look worse next year, but things are going to continue to happen. And what you said about maybe you want to lose a few those guys in the transfer portal, that's already happening. And I think that's more than okay too. I think there are a lot of changes, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where you want to see things happen. And then on the offensive side, you have a lot of really young recruits that I think you can start to get excited about next year. But Tressel, the defensive coordinator, the whole defensive side of the ball, just figure something out. I don't know. Like you can go in and play a great game against the number one team in the nation, but then you look hopeless against a Minnesota and an Iowa and a Nebraska. It's embarrassing. You can't let that happen. So figure out that side of the ball, and maybe you squeak out a couple more wins next year. But keep the expectations low. That's kind of where I stand with that. Badgers basketball is undefeated. Their best start, I believe, since 2013. You got a couple of really good teams in that squad. Kind of beating up on a Chicago State team. They play Michigan tomorrow. I'm excited for this squad as they're about to go into the Big Ten play. I will ask a few questions about the Badgers, but do you have any thoughts about where they're at in the hoops side of it going in?
Really exciting. Really exciting for what this team is doing right now. They haven't been tested too much. Obviously, the Arizona win was big. They haven't been tested too much outside of that, so I'm really excited to see where they go. Big week. Michigan always going to play tough. And then you got a big Marquette game on Saturday. So I think we're going to find out. And Marquette plays Iowa State this week as well. So both teams, I think next Monday when we talk, we're going to have a lot better idea of how battle tested this Badgers team, this Marquette team. If John Tonje is really about that life. How high in the top 10 is Cam Jones going to get picked? I'm really excited for this Badgers team. I think they scored less than 80 points this past week, though, so that was kind of shocking.
Right. I mean, that it's still a pretty high scoring game for college basketball, especially for Wisconsin expectations. But yes, that Marquette game coming up on Saturday, number 15 Wisconsin, number 10 Marquette. I will definitely have that one on wherever I am. I will be streaming that one. That's one of the most exciting Badger games that I can remember in recent history, at least this early into the season. Like this team has been playing very well. So is Marquette. And I still think Greg Gard has the upper hand over Shaka Smart. I will say that just ahead. Like last year, I remember Marquette, I believe, was a top 5 team and Wisconsin was unranked and they were able to beat them. I think that I just think guard has his number is kind of what I'll say about that. But a win against Marquette on Saturday would be huge for that Badger team. But a lot to be excited about there. The Bucks. Love to
Yeah.
talk about the Bucks. 10-9 right now, a 106-103 victory over the Heat. Dame dropped 37. They're able to take down Miami without Giannis. Then a 125-119 victory over the Hornets. Dame had 31. Giannis had 32. Then a 124-114 victory over the Wizards. Giannis dropping 42 points. Both of these guys have been playing lights out. I think this is what we imagined when Dame first came into Milwaukee.
This is it. This is the difference. You asked me last week what the difference is on these Bucks. Yeah, making the extra pass. Yeah, attention on defense. Yeah, a little bit of coaching tweak here and there. That's it. The difference is Giannis and Dame. These are two of the top 10 players in the world right now. They're two of the top 75 players to ever play the game. Giannis is a top 15 player ever to play the game. Arguably top 10. When he retires, he might be top six. I don't know. But these guys are legit. Giannis can ball out when he wants. They saw, I read a stat this morning. They have 3 games this year of 25 points and 10 assists for each of them. That's the most by any duo in any NBA history for a season.
Yeah. they're right there. Like these guys are doing it. And I think a lot of this, and you do kind of have to look at it this way as well. It's because nobody else is really stepping up on a consistent basis offensively, which is okay. You can let two guys carry you. Absolutely. But I do think the depth of this Bucks team does come into question with those guys needing to put a heavy, heavy load on their back every single night.
The depth will be our biggest battle. When we go see Boston in a 7-game series and they can go 9 deep, when they have Peyton Pritchard dropping like 17, 18 points in a fourth quarter to close out a game, we don't have that Peyton Pritchard. We don't have that eighth guy who can light it up right now. I do want to give some love to Taurean Prince, who continues to shoot absolutely lights out. He's shooting 55% from three on the season right now. Brooke Lopez still is doing his part. He had 3 blocks again the other night. Yeah, at his age, he might be losing half a step. It's hard to tell when he continues just to be a mountain down low. AJ Green is getting better, and that's why we've been saying over the past year plus that these young guys need to play because we don't have that seventh, eighth, ninth man. We don't have a Grayson Allen who can come off the bench anymore. Malik Beasley tried it, wasn't it? Gary Trent, this team, the success when it comes down to it, to actually win a title, you need those guys. You need those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do think Giannis and Dame are that good. I really, really, really do, Cody. I think that Giannis is the best player I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes. I think I've seen him drop 50 and 17 in a closeout game in the NBA Finals. He can bring you to the promised land, and Damian Lillard absolutely can as well. The best version of Damian Lillard on this team, I talked about his assists and almost assuming a little bit of a Chris Paul role last week, is that 25 and 10 kind of night. He doesn't need to be a 35-point scorer anymore. That's okay. Run a little bit more offense, orchestrate some stuff, be that pass first guy. And he's becoming that, with the healthy Giannis, with the AJ Green, knowing what you have. If he can be a 25 and 10 guy, we can do anything.
It's a very visually appealing brand of basketball, and it's much different from what you saw last year. And I like it. I really do. I think that the sky's the limit for this squad, and where they started 2-8, here we are at 10-9. Milwaukee Bucks. They turned it around. Sam called it. I got to give you your roses, man. You really did. I thought that there might have been some dark ages on the horizon, but Giannis and Dame weren't going to let that happen, and I'm here for it. I bought a Bucks hat, and we're ready to see where this season can take us. We'll move into everybody's favorite segment of the week. It is the cheese grater. Sam and I each ask each other 3 questions. We try to rattle it off. We got a little bit of extra time today. Sam, I know you said you had a pretty fun one, so we're all ready for it, and I'll let you kick it off here for the cheese grater.
Let's take my fun one first. I was struggling with my last one. I got a trivia cheese grater for you, Cody. Give me the 5 coaches in Packers history with the winningest win percentage.
Oh, well, LaFleur, I think, is number 1 or close to number 1.
He moved spots. That spurred this thought. He moved spots this past with the win over the Dolphins.
Really? Okay. But I know what he's what he's done. I mean, his first 2 years in Green Bay was 13-3. Like these guys just don't lose a lot of ball games. Their down year, they were 9-8. So LaFleur has to be top five. Uh McCarthy has to be up there. Holmgren has to be up there. Lombardi. And now it gets a little bit scary because there are some pretty bad teams and bad coaches here. Let's see. I had Lombardi, LaFleur, that's two. Holmgren, McCarthy, that's four. Oh, now I got to guess, and I have no
Oh, you don't
idea
got
where
to
I'm going
guess.
with
Don't
this.
overthink it now. He coached more games for the Packers than anybody in team history.
Uh, than anybody? I didn't name him yet.
Nope. Over 300
Curly
games.
Lambeau. Does
Curly
this work?
Lambeau.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah. I was trying to go Super Bowl era there, but yes, Curly Lambeau. Okay, there's those are
Vince
my
won
five.
se- Vince won 76% of his games. Matt LaFleur is now the second winningest coach in Packer history at 67%. Just past Mike Holmgren, who's ahead of Curly.
76%?
67 for LaFleur.
Well, I'm
Vince
saying
is
for
76.
Lombardi. Holy
Yeah.
cow, three-quarters of all your games. Wow. Yeah, okay. I guess I didn't I know all the championships were there, but 76% of your games. Yeah, I guess I should have looked into those numbers. Wow, that's incredible. All right. So then LaFleur at 67. I do want to hear the
LaFleur
rest of them.
66. LaFleur 67, Holmgren 66, Curly 66 as well. Big Mike 61.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's about expected. 76. That's quite the threshold there. There can't be many coaches at all with that type of a winning percentage. We'll have to look that up for next week because that's pretty incredible. 76% of your games. Because he was there for a long time too. That's the craziest part. But I will go into my first cheese grater. What do you expect for the defensive scheme for Thursday's game, Green Bay against Detroit?
Detroit can get you in any way. We didn't see Jameson Williams last time we played him, and I think he's definitely somebody you have to game plan for. You got to stuff the box. You got to make Goff beat you. I'm hoping to see a lot of pressure. I'm hoping to see, a lot of people in the box. If they're going to beat you, make Goff throw for 300. I think that's got to be it. Make him uncomfortable. Um, I think we can win. I don't know if
Oh
we
yeah,
will. We'll find out about the headline in just a little bit. But I think you got to put pressure
right.
on Goff. You got to make him be a dog. That's the key to beating the lines. And you got to get up early. You got to get up early. Game wise, you got to get up early. Defense wise, you got to put pressure on Goff. I think that's the key for the defense. Right now, I think we had a little bit of shakeup as of last night. Who's your top three in the MVP race right now? Football.
Ooh, okay. So what I'm seeing from Saquon Barkley, I know everyone it's a quarterback award is what most valuable
Mhm.
player is. I think my number one right now is Saquon Barkley. I think he's been doing it. I think without him, that Philly team would be I don't even know. But what Saquon Barkley, he could break the all-time rushing record. And a guy that's able to do that on the ground, and he's very valuable in the passing game as well. That's my MVP right now. Uh I still think Lamar Jackson is top three. Going into that game, I don't know what the numbers are now. He's at 30 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Those are just his passing numbers going into that game. So
That's
Lamar
awesome.
Jackson is definitely in that conversation. Joe Burrow's got crazy numbers, but his team is so bad so they don't win. So he doesn't have a chance. Uh I still think that you might call me silly because I'm not looking at a list here. But I still think Jared Goff has to be in the conversation. I mean, his team is 11-1. He's a quarterback that has played great. He's done his job. His numbers are good. I'll put him at number three.
Sure.
I want to hear yours too. Just throw it out there for me.
Josh Allen throwing, catching, running one last
Oh,
night. That's
yeah.
awesome. He's my
Yeah,
number one
sorry.
right now.
That's yeah, I'll take him over Goff. Sorry. Yeah, I watched that
Uh,
game. I did. I was like that I don't know what his fantasy total was, but yeah, he had a receiving touchdown, a passing touchdown, and a rushing touchdown. That's I don't
I
know how you
love it.
score that, but
In
no,
the
that was
snow
great.
too.
Yeah.
Every time I watch Josh Allen, I'm blown away. The guy's he's a big athlete. He can throw at the distance. He can run over you. I'm rooting for the Bills, man. I want to see Josh Allen succeed.
They're doing
And
it
then I got
really without a
Saquon.
top receiver, too.
Yeah, Absolutely.
I
13 completions last night, and they're still running over there taking care of like good
Yeah.
business.
Here, I'll throw one at you,
Um,
Sam.
yeah.
Uh, what is one word for Badgers football that you have to say about this team right now and for the team in the future down the line? Give me one word for each.
Uh, Trust right now, trust in the short future. And then power, trenches. Trenches, dude. Let's go. Let's get back
I
to the
like it.
trenches. Now, how much football I watched this weekend, and every time they do the player intros, somebody on the offensive line is Greg Smith, Wisconsin, and then they keep going.
Yep.
Oh, Tim Paul, Wisconsin. We got a big boy on everybody's offensive line. Everybody wants to play for the team with the
Hmm.
big boys up front. Let's trust this process and get back in the trenches.
I agree.
We got the haves and have-nots in the NFL right now. I think it's starting to separate. Is there going to be anybody that's a shocker in the playoffs?
Ooh, a shocker. Okay, so this brings you to okay. I think Minnesota's a one out with their record that might shock people, but I don't see them getting past anybody. I think I'll say that once it gets to the playoff time, it's impressive to see them win this to watch them win this many games right now because I didn't expect it at all. You can go back to my podcast earlier before the season. I did not expect this team to be anywhere close to sniffing the playoffs, but they're there, and I do have to give them their roses as well. Or actually, I went out to Menards and I bought some poinsettias. I can give them their poinsettias, but I think that might come as a surprise for a team that doesn't have a lot of expectations to go and run the table. Well, let's see. You're going to have Philly in the East. Your NFC North is all going to be in. And then your NFC West. I think there's a lot to be desired there. I don't think Arizona can do. I don't think any of those teams can right now. And I think San Francisco being as banged up as they are, you
Yeah.
can't expect a whole lot. I think Pittsburgh in the AFC, like they didn't have a lot of expectations coming in, but Russell Wilson, people forget this guy was a Super Bowl MVP. This guy was right there. He would be top five in MVP conversations, and he would play well down the stretch in the playoffs, unless it's against Green Bay, but they find a way to win that anyway. But this Pittsburgh team, they have their coach, they have their defense. Now they have their offense playing well too. But I do like what Mike Tomlin said. George Pickens needs to grow up and very quickly. But I think Pittsburgh could surprise some people in the AFC. Uh, do you have expectations? What are your highest expectations for Badgers basketball?
I think this team, without the expectations, we're still growing. We are playing above expectations right now. This 15 seed seems kind of generous. Hey, we're undefeated. We're doing the thing. You keep cruising through the Big Ten. Like I said, you got Tanjay. If the team's playing well and they can control the offense and they're scoring this many points and they're hitting threes, let's get in the Sweet 16 and let's make a run. If we can get a top four seed, I think that would make this Badgers team because we're seeing them roll when we're playing lesser opponents. And then with confidence, we take down Arizona. I think that's going to be really key for this team heading late into the season. Get one of those top seeds, get through that first weekend of basketball, and then start playing with some confidence. And let's see what Tanjay can do. You're going to be riding a hot hand. We'll see what we can do. Keep out of foul trouble in March. That's always huge when you only get 5 fouls. I think we can be an Elite Eight team. I think that's the ceiling.
And who would be your we'll switch back to the NFL here. I liked your question there. Who would be your surprise going into the playoffs?
I'm I hate to be that guy, but I think the Packers. I think everyone's looking at like the
Oh,
haves and have-nots right now. And like you're looking at like
yeah.
Bills, Chiefs, Lions. Okay, also hate to be that guy, but the 49ers, I've seen them be too talented. If they can win the NFC West, that's a team. I talked about it with the Bengals earlier this year. A team that you just don't want to see in the playoffs. I think they can win any single game, any single time. They haven't been playing good.
Oh, they're so
It's
done.
it's
I'm sorry, Sam. I can't even entertain that. Did you watch that game last night in its
they don't
entirety?
look good.
This
especially
team
without
without
McCaffrey.
Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel's dropping so many balls. And the
Yeah.
defense looks old. It looks slow. They can't cover. They can't tackle. I was really high on this 49ers team too, but now with McCaffrey being out for the year, like that, sorry, no shot. I don't think so. But I do like your Green Bay one. I
And
do.
that's why I liked the question, because I think there's such a disparity between the top 4 or 5 teams in the league and everybody else.
Yeah.
I don't think that, the 49ers can run. I don't think that the Steelers can make a run. I think it's gonna be Bills, Eagles, Lions, Chiefs, and I that would love to see the Packers there.
See, I
Um,
think the Packers are right there. And I'll let
really?
that go right into my headline.
Yeah.
We watched this story last year, but I think they're going to get them. The headline, Packet payback against Detroit, Jacobs stretch continues. I think we saw the same story last year where Green Bay got absolutely stomped in the first game. And I don't think they played all that bad when you and I went to Lambeau to go watch them play against Detroit. It was a couple of things that tossed it. They switched up the momentum, but I think Green Bay is going to find a way to win this game. I think they're going to lean on Josh Jacobs again. We saw him start to do that early in the Detroit game, but when it got to the second half, they couldn't lean on him as much. I think if they get Jacobs rolling from the get-go, this is going to be a tough team to beat. I think Green Bay gets Detroit this week.
I love it. We're switching roles a little bit. Usually I'm the hopeful optimist. Jacobs not enough. Pat go down 27-16. The Lions roaring towards division title.
Mm.
I still think that there's just a different level to this. Lions showed a little bit of vulnerability against Chicago, who, God, Chicago, the Bears still suck. It's awesome. Um, they showed a little bit of vulnerability, and they keep picking up injuries. They had another big linebacker go down this past week. You just hate to see it, but I think there's levels to this. Detroit has shown me all year long that they're a buzzsaw, and I think the Packers need to get lucky to beat them, and I don't see that happening on Thursday night.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens for our next headline show. But I'm very excited for this. This is going to be a really good one. But I'm hopeful about my Packers. You got any final thoughts? Any hopes, dreams for the people? Here as we wrap up.
Hopes, dreams for the people. I don't know. Go learn how to Dougie this week. Go learn a dance move. That's my
Learn
hot
how to
take for the day.
Dougie. I'm
Yeah.
learning chess now. That might be my new thing. I'm getting on chess.com. It's a very complicated game. It's not an easy one to learn at all. There are levels to that 100%. I can tell you that. But I'm Cody Depius. That's Sam Douglas. We want to thank you for being here once again this week. We'll see if we get to an end of the week show. Sam, you got some time? Maybe on Friday you want to try to cover the game, get a little early into it?
Let's do it. We'll talk about the Packers from Thursday night, and then that's the day of the big Bucks game too, right before the Badgers
So you want to
play
do
Marquette
Friday?
on Saturday. Yeah, let's do it. It's gonna be a fun Thursday, Friday, Saturday for us.
All right. So we'll do a Friday show. We'll be back for that. We'll see you then, as this has been another edition of A Little Bit of Cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast.